Season 3 opens tonight. It's now 16 years later. We're in Daniel chapter 3. We're calling it season 3. You know why? Because we're almost 20 years into the story of Daniel, and we're just 2 pages in the book of Daniel. Yeah, there's a lot of time happening between these verses. We read them in a few minutes, but it took 20 years to get to Daniel chapter 3. I want you to open your Bibles, if you have them, to Daniel chapter 3, and we're going to read this together. If you have a Man-Up Bible, it's page 944 for you. If you don't have that, I have no idea what page number yours is, but it's 944 in the Man-Up Bible. Daniel chapter 3, we read, starting in verse 1, it says this: King Nebuchadnezzar made a gold statue. Whoa. What kind of statue did he make? Gold. In the dream 16 years earlier, what was the head of the dream? Gold. The dream was that you will be overtaken by the Medes and the Persians. Guess what? He'll do that in 2 weeks. We'll see that happen in the lifetime of Daniel. He'll literally see the handwriting on the wall, if you've ever heard that phrase. It comes from that story where the gold falls to the Medes and the Persians, and they take over the most powerful man in the world who thought he was untouchable, and he thought he was God. And 16 years later, after hearing the truth of God and even proclaiming, praise the God of Daniel, nobody can ever say anything bad about the God of Daniel because he's a good God. Now we're going to also have a bunch of other gods, but that's a good one. We should probably keep him too. But in this saga, 16 years have come and gone and nobody's conquered him. And you got to know that he's thinking, that ain't happening. I'm still the dog. I am still in charge. I'm as powerful as I've ever been, and I am not going down anytime soon. In fact, build a statue made of gold. Most commentaries that I read this week said that the statue was probably a replica of him. Put a 90-foot neb out there and make everybody bow down to it. That's what we're going to do. He made a gold statue 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide, and he set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then he sent messengers to the high officers, the officials, the governors, the advisors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates. That means everybody was invited to this. In fact, everybody was not just invited, everybody was expected. Everybody had to be there to come to the dedication of the statue that he had set up. By the way, I love the old King James Version. It says he built a gold image. Isn't Babylon all about image management anyway? Neb was always concerned about his image. So are we. And we may not raise up a 90-foot Jay or a 90-foot Todd or a 90-foot Joe, but we'll bow down and worship the God of approval all day long. It's the same difference. Oh, we may not worship a golden statue, but we'll worship the next promotion. We're not bowing down to a golden statue, but we're worshiping the select team that our kid has just got to get on, no matter what. All right, be careful. We're worshiping the next degree. We're worshiping entertainment. We're worshiping a sports team. We're worshiping We're worshiping comfort, by the way. That's one I've seen happen in my lifetime. If it's comfortable, if I like it, if I enjoy it, if it's good to me, it's in. If it's not, it's out. King Nebuchadnezzar, we may not bow down and worship a statue, but we worship a lot of other things. King Nebuchadnezzar set up this image, verse 3. So all the officials came and he stood before the statue King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And a herald shouted, people of all races, all nations, all languages, listen to the king's command. When you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, I have no idea what that is, the lyre, the harps, the pipes, and other musical instruments, say the next word. Bow. When you hear the music, bow. Bow to the ground to worship King Nebuchadnezzar's golden statue. Anyone who refuses to obey will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. whoa, where'd that come from? This guy is wacko jacko, man. Last week he was gonna rip people's limbs off and like rubble their houses. Now he's going, you do what I say or I'll throw you into a fiery furnace. Like, is this fairy tale? No. What would it take to make a 90-foot statue of gold? A fiery furnace. A big furnace, a hot furnace, and a lot of gold. You can only imagine that the gold was still warm to the touch, and that the furnace that was used to make the statue was right there. It's like, all right, I got a deal. You don't bow down to me, I'll throw you money. What are the things we bow down to? Money, power, politics, our candidate, approval, fame, our family. Oh, well, they want this. I know what God's asking us to do, but I want to make sure my family gets comfortable. This is what they like. This is what we all like. We love this. God will get to you when we get to you. But little Timmy, he just loves this. And I know it, but, Timmy. Okay. Worship our families. Sports, entertainment, comfort. And if you've been around Mount Up for a while at all, talk about the 4 circles. It's God, me, you, and others. And we take all these good gifts from God and we shove them at the center and we wonder why they're not a good God. They were never made to be. They were supposed to be gifts from God that we enjoyed, but when we bow down and worship these gifts as God, they disappoint every time. Somebody say amen to that. All right. Anything, fill this in, anything you put before God is an idol. And just so you know, it's often the good gifts of thee that we turn into idols that replace God. It's usually the good gifts of God that we don't keep in check, that we don't honor God first and enjoy them second. We enjoy them first, and regardless of what it does to our relationship with God. And when we cram that thing at the center, the Bible calls it an idol. We keep reading in Daniel chapter 3, verse 7. He said, anybody that doesn't bow down, you're going in that thing. So, at the sound, verse 7, so at the sound of the musical instruments, all the people, whatever their race, whatever their nation, whatever their language, they bowed to the ground and they worshiped the gold statue that King Neb had set up. But some of the astrologers went to the king, tattletales, went to the king and informed on the Jews. They informed the king about the Jews. They're like, king, do you know that when you played the music, not everybody bowed down? Did you know that? They informed about the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, verse 9, long live the king. You issued a decree requiring all the people bow down and worship the gold statue when they heard the sound of all those instruments. Verse 11, that decree, by the way, king, in case you've forgotten, I know it's only been a couple minutes, but in case you forgot what you decided, that he also states those who refuse to obey must be thrown into the blazing furnace. But there are some Jews. Well, there's that one guy over in accounting that just won't kind of go with the flow and do what we're telling him. There's that one Christian that doesn't want to go out with us at the after party. What a stick in the mud. There's the one guy that won't watch that because he says it's not very godly. There's one guy that refuses to have one more when we're all having one more. What's his deal? And whichever side of that you're on, you've been there. And I've been there. And he says, there are some Jews, king. There are some Jews named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whom you put in charge, by the way, of the province of Babylon. They pay no attention to you, your majesty. They refuse to serve your gods. They do not worship the gold statue you've set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage. Of course he did. This guy's the biggest hothead you've ever seen. He ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. And y'all, this is just like an episode of Yellowstone. This is what would happen. These are real deals. These are real boys that are standing in front of a real king who has real power and real authority. Now they're standing in front of him. And here's what happens. Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you refuse to serve my gods or to worship the golden statue that I set up? I will give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I've made when you hear the sound of the music instruments. But if you refuse," let's be real clear here, boys, "I'm going to give you another chance." What king that has all power of the known world says, "Did you not hear me? I'm going to give you another chance"? And let me be real clear. If you don't take this chance, this is your last chance to bow down and worship me. If you don't take the chance, you're executed immediately. You will go straight from standing to burning. That's your option. You're either going to kneel or you're going to burn. What do you choose? Question. Get your pens ready. Why was idolatry such a big deal anyway? I've already told you that these guys, these boys had already been in Babylon for 20 years at this point. They're somewhere in their mid-30s at this point. They have towed the line to this point. They have honored God Jehovah. They passed the test. They've already stood up to King Nebuchadnezzar once. They've already stood up to him twice. Every season they stand up to him. How easy would it be? Watch this, watch this. How easy would it be in season 3 for them to go, "It's just once. It's just, God, it's just one knee. I won't even go all the way down. I'll just kind of go halfway down. I'll keep my face looking at God so I'm not really worried." Well, don't you know they were tempted to compromise? And so am I. And so are you. We know clearly what God's told us about marriage and money and adultery and affairs and power and fame and greed and pride. We know what God's told us, and we're like, well, hold on, I can still worship him and just maybe bow like a little bit to that God. And maybe both of them will be happy with me. These boys did not bow. Why was idolatry such a big deal? Just write this in your notes. If I taught this, we'd be here all night. In Exodus chapter 20, because idolatry disobeys the first 2 of the 10 commandments. They knew that. Don't make another God. Another God, don't make another God. Idolatry is disobeying the first 10 commandments, Exodus chapter 20. Number 2, the second reason idolatry is such a big deal, it's creating God in your own image. Isaiah chapter 40, he says, "Are you really going to worship an image that you just carved with your knife out of wood? How stupid is that? You made it, and then you bow down to it. That's dumb." When God created Adam in the garden, he says, "Let's make Adam in our image." We're not to turn God into our image, we're in his. Idolatry was a big deal because it's turning God into our image instead of conforming to his image. That's Isaiah chapter 40. The third reason idolatry is such a big deal is it's robbing God of his eternal worship. In Revelation chapter 7, it says there will come a time at the end of the age when the rock shatters and sets up an eternal kingdom that the tribe and the tongue from every nation and every people will bow down and worship God eternally. And Nebuchadnezzar's trying to steal that from God right here. And your boss is too. And that private internet account is too. And the overeating is too, and the overdrinking is too, and the anger is too, and the pride, whatever our idol has worship be is saying, worship me. And the reason I love it is because it's robbing God of his worship. You say it's not a big deal. God said it was a big deal. He goes, don't you dare give worship to another. That's why idolatry was such a big deal. A little question here, a little side note. Where was Daniel? Hey, anybody else been asking, where's Daniel in all this? Let me tell you where Daniel was. We don't know. But odds are Daniel was nowhere around. He was maybe off. He was the king or in charge of all the court. He had moved up to the top echelons of Babylon at this point. Maybe he was out on kingly business or something, but he's nowhere to be found in the story. Why is that important? Because you got to know Daniel would be with these three boys, but I think God says, I'm going to first let you follow Daniel's footsteps, but Daniel won't always be there to lead you. You got to man up and do it yourself sometime. Come on, somebody. You can't wait on your mama or your daddy or your preacher or Jay or your table group leader to always hold your hand to the next step you got to take. You got to man up and take it yourself. And in the absence of Daniel, I love what Beth Moore says in her study on Daniel, which is phenomenal. She's an unbelievable Bible teacher. I love what she says about this. She goes, this is a divine setup for a step up. This is a divine setup for three boys to step up. Don't be looking to your spiritual mentor. Maybe it's your turn. Maybe it's your turn to step up. Maybe there's three young boys behind you that are watching you and waiting and say, I don't care what granddaddy did. I want to know if you're going to do it. It's your turn to step up. Daniel chapter 3 is back on your notes, verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, Oh, Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves. If we are thrown in the blazing furnace, they're talking to King Nebuchadnezzar, who just made a 90-foot statue of gold to look like him. He's got the fiery furnace. They're standing in between the two options, and they tell King Neb, if we're thrown into the fiery furnace, the God who we serve is able to, say it, save us. Our God is going to save us. I know you think you're a God, but our God is the God. Our God is going to save us no matter what you do to us. How you like them apples, King Neb? Our God's going to save us. Watch this. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. They're respectful, but clear. But even if he doesn't, what? But even if our God doesn't save us, and even if our God doesn't rescue us, even if our God doesn't show up like we think he will and should, even if he doesn't. Watch this. Watch the faith of these boys, these young men, these 35-year-olds. Watch. I'd give my right arm to have three of you that had this kind of faith. Not really my right arm, because I'd type with that, but maybe my left. Imagine the power that would happen in Lakeway and Four Points and Austin and Bee Caves and Spicewood and Westlake and the places that you live. Imagine the power if three of us banded together and said, I don't care what happens with the pandemic, with the election, with the stock market, with my job. I don't care what happens. My God is going to save me, and I will never, ever, ever bow down to yours. I am not bowing down to the idol of fear or panic, the king, or politics or nationalism. I'm bowing down to that. I'm bowing down to King Jesus and nobody else. And I promise you, this season, this series of Daniel might get me in a little hot water. I'm going to walk on out into the hot water and stay there. They were bowing down to God Jehovah no matter what. It said, even if our God doesn't save us, we will watch this, we will never bow down to you and your gods. King Neb did not like that. You gotta know, everybody's watching like the final episode of Yellowstone on season 3. They're like, oh my God, what's gonna happen now? Casey's gonna flip that desk over and go, pow, pow, pow. You're just watching, this is good. King Neb did not like that. They said, we will never bow down. Let me ask you a question. What's on your never list? What's on your never list? What are some non-negotiables between you and God that says, I will not do that no matter what? I won't go there. I won't sleep with her. I won't look at that. I won't stay after. I won't stay out too late. I won't go into that room. I won't hold on to my anger. I will never do that. That's on my never list. And as I process this lesson with Rebecca, she says, Jay, I really like that. I like the idea of a never list. She goes, but you might want to add right next to it, or a never again list. Oh, hallelujah, right? Because we've already violated some of the things that we thought were on our never list. And part of taking a stand is going, you know what, I'm gonna get some things, some values, some principles, some God-ordained vision, mission, and purpose in my life, and I am not bowing down or backing up. And if I've already blown that, then I'm gonna start a never again list. Amen? What's on your never list or your never again list? Where are you tempted to compromise or conform? I know that it's hard to take a stand. I know it's hard. It's hard to take a stand, watch this, when telling the truth will cost you the deal. It's hard to take a stand when doing the right thing is going to take twice as long. It's hard to take a stand when you're the new guy. You're the intern. You're the freshman. You're the junior partner. It's hard to take a stand when she started the fight. I didn't start it, she started it. It's hard to take a stand when she bashes you or disrespects you in front of the kids and you can't do anything about it. Well, now it's tit for tat. You started it, so I'm all in. It's hard to take a stand when she's not in, but you're trying to be. You say, well, you're just painting out the girls to look bad. No, I just don't teach women. I tell them the same thing. I'm just telling you that we got to do the right thing regardless of what they do. It's hard to take a stand when she gives you more attention than your wife does. More than one time. More than one time. I've gotten a phone call late in the evening that goes something like this. I can think of 3 times in particular. Somewhere around 11:30, get a phone call, and I'm like, yeah? All right, Jay, I just got invited to a room. I'm like, don't go. Got a phone call one time, he says, I'm 1 drink away from having an affair. I'm like, I got a really simple solution. Don't have another drink and go back to your hotel room. It's hard to take a stand when she doesn't give you that she does. Stand anyway. You say, I thought we already had our little family talk at the beginning. This is a little bit family-ish tonight too. Stand anyway. It's hard to take a stand when he got the promotion that you deserved, or he got the bonus but you did all the work. It's hard to take a stand when he's the one that ruined your marriage in the first place. He cheated with her. Come on. I deserve the right to be angry and to revenge a little bit. It's hard to take a stand when everyone else is laughing, when everyone else is going, when everyone else is having another one. It's hard to take a stand and go, I'm all good, thanks. It's hard to take a stand when after the meeting's over and then you got the post-meeting meeting and the post-meeting party and you're like, well, I'm supposed to go and I'm supposed to network. And you know in your heart that you got no business being there. It's hard to take a stand when you're in a hotel room and it's just you and the TV. Am I being honest or not? It's hard to take a stand when everyone else is doing it. It's hard to take a stand when no one will ever know. Ooh, looking around. I think I'm in the clear on this one. It's hard to take a stand when you're tired, when you're hungry, when you're bored. It's hard to take a stand when you're the only one. And watch this. One of the hardest of all to take a stand is when you've been standing for a long time. And you think you deserve a little bow because you've Already been standing for 20 years. Don't you deserve one night out, one look, one more? Don't you deserve a little bit of anger and a little bit of hatred and a little bit of pride and a little bit of gotcha? And after all, you've been standing for 20 straight years. Good golly. It's hard to take a stand when you've been standing for a long time. Stand anyway. Stand anyway. Stand anyway. I wish I was close enough to see every one of you in the eyeballs. Look at me, I'm gonna get out of the light. Stand anyway. What are your other options? To bow down to something that wants to consume you? That seeks you like a roaring lion and wants to drag your ass away? Uh-oh, I just said that. Well, I thought hard about that the other night. When you the other night. When I had an early meeting and when you sleep upstairs, and you got an option right then of, should I leave my phone here or should I take it into the spare bedroom with me? I think maybe I'll leave it out here. Because this little guy here wants to drag my tail to the ditch, kick me in it, and then shame me for it. Stand anyway. Y'all with me? This is real stuff. And these boys decided they were going to stand anyway. We got to move on. Good golly. How do you take a stand? Number one, how do you take a stand when everyone else is bowing down? You got to know what you believe going into the crisis. You got to know what's true. You got to know what your non-negotiables are. You got to know what your values, your purpose, your mission. You got to know that early on or you're going to fall for anything. You got to know what you believe. Number one. Number two is this. You have to pre-decide how you'll respond. When she does this, I'll do this. When they offer, I'll say this. When this, then this. When this, then this. You got to pre-decide. See, they pre-decided when he says, I'll give you one more chance. They said, you don't need to give us one more chance. We've already decided that even when the music plays, we're not bowing down. Now, you can play the music if you'd like. We can take longer for us to get to the furnace if you'd like. It's just going to be an extra step. But we already know what we believe, and we've already pre-decided how we'll respond. I firmly believe this might be one of the most important things from tonight's talk, is to pre-decide how you'll respond when then. When this, then this. And just have some non-negotiables, have some presets, have some no. When I get the invite, I already know it's no. And when they ask if I want one more, the answer's no. And when I go here, then I don't bring this. When I travel, I don't sit with her. Not a good one, not a good deal. Pre-decide how you respond. Number three, you got to be okay with being the only one. You say, well, Jay, there was three. I believe that when the first time the trumpet blew, I believe all three of them are going, good golly, I hope I'm not the only one. And then they look sideways like, oh, at least they're going to get killed too. Yes. But I think they're not. They had to think, I hope Shadrach does, but whether he does or not, I'm going to take a stand. I hope my four-quarter friends do, but even if they don't, I'm going to take a stand. I hope she responds like this, but even if she doesn't, I'm going to take a stand. Pre-deciding how you'll respond and being okay with being the only one. Number four, how do you take a stand? You trust God with the outcome. They said, we believe that our God's going to save us, but even if he doesn't, we're never going to bow down to you. Daniel chapter 3, verse 19, Nebuchadnezzar was so furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face became distorted with rage. I mean, you can just see him going, oh my gosh, I cannot believe you guys. He commanded that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than usual, and then he ordered some of the strongest men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So they tied them up. Didn't I tell you? Sin wants to drag you away and destroy you. So they tied them up, threw them into the furnace, fully dressed in their pants, their turbans, their robes, and other garments. And because the king in his anger had demanded that such a hot fire in the furnace, the flames killed the soldiers as they threw the 3 men in. Everything I read said it was probably more like an outdoor chimney, like an outdoor furnace that had an opening that they would put throwing them in like a giant pizza oven, right? But they throw these guys in, and just the act of throwing them in, his strongest felt like that. Well, let's see how the 3 boys fared. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, securely tied, fell into the roaring flames. But suddenly Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, "Didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace?" They're like, "You're losing your mind." "Yes, it just happened. 3, yes, Your Majesty, we certainly did," they replied. Verse 25, "Look," Nebuchadnezzar shouted, "I see 4 men, and one of them looks like the son of the gods." Daniel, this portion of Daniel was actually written in Aramaic, and all the research that I've been able to find out says that it's easily translated. The 4th one is like the son of God. Here was a king that had worshiped a plethora of gods. So many gods you could hardly even keep up with them. And he's looking at that number 4 in the fire going, "Oh, that's not one I've seen before. This might be the Son of God." 4th article I read this week in preparing for this, most scholars believe that 4th man in the fire, remember there's another in the fire, we sang it week number 1. That other one in the fire was Jesus Christ himself. Called a theophany. It happened several times in the Old Testament. This was one of the few times where Jesus Christ showed up when they stood up. Come on, we want Jesus to show up in our life, but we want to bow down and have him show up too. We can't have it both ways. Guys, if we take a stand for Jesus, he'll stand with us. You know what Isaiah wrote in verse 43, verse 2? Isaiah 43:2, don't turn there because I will. He says this, "When you walk through the fire, I will be with you. When you're in the deep waters, you will not drown." Who wrote that? Isaiah. When did he write that? 100 years before this happened. You gotta know they're back scrolling through that. Didn't I say something about it? Like God would be in the fire? And they're like, did you see that guy in the fire? Yeah, I think maybe that was him. And they're like, yeah, probably so. He even told us that he would. There was a 4th one in the fire. It's like the Son of God. Nebuchadnezzar came as close as he could to the door of the flaming furnace, and he shouted, "Shadrach! Oh my God, come on, buddies now. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, come on out. Servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." You notice he did not call number 4 out. He's like, "Are you going to stay in there? You and I are not tangling today. Come here." Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stepped out of the fire. Then high officers, officials, governors, advisors crowded around them and saw that the fire had not even touched them. Not a hair on their heads was singed. Their clothing wasn't scorched. And they didn't even smell like smoke. Come on. No, that's a freaking miracle if I've ever seen one. And listen. When you take a stand and your miracle moment happens, like I told you one of mine last week, when God shows up, you don't even smell like smoke. The story you tell is like, "Man, I can't even believe that ever even happened to you. I thought you always trusted God. I never knew you how to throw down with God one night on Prayer Mountain. I would have never guessed you would have doubted him that much." "Oh yeah, I did. I doubted him a lot that night." "Well, you don't even smell like smoke now." "Well, I used to. But he rescued me in the fire." This is good stuff, right? It's good stuff, family. All right, let's wrap this train up. Why doesn't God deliver you from the fire? Burning up. That's always been my question. Like, I got a better idea. Instead of having to do all the tying up and the burning up and all the falling down and the calling out, why didn't you just go, "King Neb, Why did you even do the fire deal? Why'd you do the fire drill? That's kind of funny. Why doesn't God just deliver us from the fire to begin with? Number one, the fire is what burns off your ropes. Those seasons of fear and anger and lust and addiction that have roped you for years, God says, I'm going to drag your tail into such a hot fire, and when you meet me there, you won't be burned, but your addiction will be. I got one yep. Come on, that's a whoop yep. You won't be burned, but your anger will be. You won't be burned, but your bitterness will be. You won't be earned, but your pride will be burnt off, Jay. I call the couple years that I spent in Charlotte, North Carolina, the years where God would he had that fire on me for 2 years going, there, we got to burn that one off, we got to burn that one off, we got to burn that one off, and good golly, you got a lot of ropes, got to burn that one off. I'm going to drag you all the way to Texas because there's a couple more ropes that are only going to get burned off over there. Well, I'm going to burn you coming and burn you going. And it's why I can cry so easily now. Because I'm just so grateful for those really, really, really hard fires that burn off your ropes. Number two, why doesn't God save us from the fire? Number two is this: the fire is where you actually get to walk with God. Like of the handful of times that Jesus Christ came down in a theophany in the Old Testament, they got to do it. They got to physically walk with God. I cannot tell you how many men and families and couples that I've sat with that said this season changed our relationship with God. It forced us to get after him and beg for his forgiveness and beg for his mercy and beg for his help. And we came into this crisis not chasing God, and we're coming out the other side on fire for God. Why? Because you've been walking with him for a little while. Come on. Number three, why doesn't God deliver you from the fire? Because the fire is where God shows off his power. Because the only time we need a miracle is when we need a miracle. I read a book years ago by John Ortberg, pastor. It was called If You Want to Walk on Water, You Got to Get Out of the Boat. And I'll never forget the phrase early in the book. He says, so many of us Christians where we pray that God will do a miracle in our life, and then we spend our whole lives avoiding the situation where we need a miracle. Oh, I'm begging you tonight that in your arena of life, if God says, stop bowing down, stand up. Stand up to that thing and watch this. This is what I do. Stand up to that sin and tell it to go to hell where it belongs. Literally, physically, audibly, tell it to go to hell where it came from and where it belongs and where it'll end up. This is an opportunity to see God's power. But you got to stand up. The last reason, watch this. Because the fire is the story that you'll tell. Nobody says, man, life was going great, and then it got a little bit greater, and then it got even greater than that, and whoo, that's my story. Nobody cares. We don't want to hear that story. I'm going to a movie for the first time in 6 months, and if there's no drama or conflict up front, I'm out. What makes a good story is the drama, it's the tension, it's the protagonist, it's the antagonist. It's the need for a rescue, it's the need for a hero, it's the need for saving. We've always loved those stories. Why? Because it's in our DNA to need it. And when you come through that on the other side, the fire will be the story you tell. And let me just finish with this. And God is the hero of that story, not you. God is the hero. So when you tell that story, if you're still the one that walked out of the fire and saved yourself and bootstrapped yourself, and then I figured this out, and then I hustled my way out, then you're still in the chains of pride and you're still in the fire. You know you're out of the fire when God is the hero of the story and you're not. And when you humbly and tearfully go, Oh, if it wasn't for Jesus, I'd still be all bound up with that. And if it's not for Jesus, I'll be bound up again. I want us to close in prayer. I want you to think about an arena of your life where God's asking you to stand up. You've been bowing down to anger. Just cannot let it go, cannot forgive, cannot get over what they did to you and what they owe you. You've been bound down to pride. I deserve, fill in the blank. I'm better than, fill in the blank. You've been bowing down to greed. Whatever it takes, however many hours it takes, whatever it does to my family, as long as I can get, fill in the blank. And you've been bound down to that. You've been bound down to lust. Something that's not rightfully yours, but you go, I want it. I don't care if it belongs to me or not. I don't care if it's good for me or not. I just want it, and that's all I know. Been bound down to that? Stand up. Been bound down to anger? Stand up. Bound down to fear? Stand up. Bound down to self-righteousness? Stand up. You've been bound down to an addiction that's dragging you to places that you never thought you'd go again and never imagined you'd be in the first place. Stand up. This is the invitation for tonight. If one of the ones that I just mentioned are yours, or a truckload of ones I didn't mention are yours, because you're like, thank God he didn't mention mine. Mine's way over here. He didn't even think to go over there. Mine's deep in the ditch. Well, I'm talking about that one too. If you've been bowing down to that, when I pray, I'm going to invite you, if you've been bound down to one of these or a slew of these, that when I start praying, before we sing, the moment I start praying, you stand to your feet. And by that, you're telling God, I don't know how, but I know when. I will not bow down to that past tonight. That's the deal. That's what I'm asking you to do. When I pray, if God's pulling on your heart, going, stop bowing down to that, stand up, look for me. When I pray, I want you to stand. When I finish praying, we'll sing one song. I don't care which one you do, but we're just going to worship God and say, maybe I came in bowing, but I'm leaving standing. I came in bowing, but I'm leaving standing. And I think God the Father says, come on, boy, that a boy. I'm going to get in that fire with you. Watch how we burn these ropes off, and you, my friend, won't even smell like smoke before too long. Dear Jesus, it's a lot of stuff. Dear Jesus, oh, dear Jesus, it's every single man in the room. Every single one of us are standing up to you right now. We're raising our hearts and our spirits to you right now and say, on this Thursday night that I almost didn't come, I came in bowing, but I'm going to leave standing. I came in bowing, but I'm going to leave standing. And I I'm not going to stand alone. I'm going to ask for help like we learned last week, and I'm going to stand with 3 others, and it doesn't matter who they are or what it takes, but we're going to lock on. We're going to stand in that fire together. We're going to watch you burn off our crap together. We're going to watch it happen, and we're going to celebrate you the whole time. I see some of you now not social distancing. I think Jesus understands. I think he's strong enough. I think he's strong enough to enter this room and burn every bond we came in with. Dear Jesus, do it. And all God's men said, amen.
And we're creation suddenly articulate, and with 1,000 tongues to lift one cry. And from north to south and east to west, we hear Christ be magnified. And where the whole earth echoing his evidence, and his name would burst from sea and sky. From rivers to the mountaintops, we hear Christ be magnified. Sing this chorus with me. Oh, Christ be magnified. Sing it, oh, Christ be magnified. Just let his praise arise. Christ be magnified. Singing, oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. And Christ be magnified in me. When every creature finds its inmost melody, and every native cry in one, and then in one enraptured hymn of praise, we'll sing Christ be magnified in us, Lord. Sing it, oh, Christ be magnified. Just let his praise arise, and Christ be magnified in me. Singing, oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. Everything I have is yours. Here at your feet, Father. Sing this with me. I won't bow to idols, and I won't bow to idols. I'll stand strong and worship you, and if it puts me through the fire, I'll rejoice.